In this video, you'll learn everything there is to know about building a single page app within Bubble, also known as an SPA for short.
Darlings, buckle up.
Look, we'll explain the difference between a standard multi-page app as well as a single page app, the benefits of actually using a single page app, when and why you should use them, and of course, absolutely everything you need to know about building them. Go! Look, there's so much that we need to cover within this tutorial today, so I'm going to hand this one over to Dave, and he's going to walk you through all of the steps.
Today I'm going to talk about building a single page app, and as an introduction, I think the best thing to do is to demonstrate the difference between a single page app and the same functionality running as multiple pages. So jumping into the Bubble editor, and if we go to the page menu, you can see I've created multiple pages, and one of these is a single page app, so it's running these multiple pages, same functionality as a single page, and we're going to compare that flow to running it as multiple pages. And so let's preview the single page app first. And the way it works is when I click these options in the menu on the left, the different pages change on the right side. And you can see it happens really fast and really smooth. And if you look at the URL, you'll see that we're staying on the same page, but what's changing is these parameters of that page. Okay, now let's compare that to the same app running as multiple pages. So I'm just going to select one of these multiple pages and then we'll go from there. So same setup, but now when I click, you see it's slightly slower, and if you look at the URL, the page itself changes with each of these selections. So it's reloading the page with each click. So that's the difference from a user experience. Now let's talk about what's going on behind the scenes. So how is this done? So as you saw, I created menu options for the different pages. And in the single page app, I'm using URL parameters that correspond to each of those menu options. And I'm using option sets to do that. And then I use the URL parameters in conditional statements to change the display elements in the group section on the right. So don't worry, I'm going to explain all of that in detail. But if you understood that, you can skip ahead to the different parts that you want to learn. So what are some considerations when you're building a single page app? And first I want to disclaim, I'm not going to be showing style details. There's other videos about that, but I will be talking about some of the advanced features that you'll need to learn. So one is URL parameters. This is an easy way to send data when decisions are made in the workflow. And it's really at the core of the single page app's speed and functionality. And I'll show you how to use option sets to keep the choices that are made disciplined, because instead of having to type out and remember what each option is, we'll have a drop-down menu that let you make the selection, because we're going to be reusing the options in the menu options, in the URL parameters, and in the display group. So the same exact words need to be in all of those places. And so the benefit of using an option set is it helps you organize your workflow. It gives you a consistent user experience because you can use that in the display elements. And as a builder, it helps you not have to remember exactly how you type things in, and it avoids you making typos at all. So those are the benefits of option sets, and we'll be talking about those. We'll also be talking about reusable elements. And in the build that I've made today, the header will be a reusable element. I won't be talking about that. The menu is a reusable element, and the display groups could be reusable elements. And I'll show you how to convert each of those groups into reusable elements. So why reusable elements? These are structures that you can reuse, which is just another way to save time and streamline formatting. And it's a good way to isolate workflows. So in this case, especially with the reusable menu, we'll want to isolate the workflows and organize things, and instead of grouping it all on the same home page. So when do you want to build with a single page app? Really kind of always, and maybe the better question is when not to. And that would be if you have really different features and workflows for each of your pages. So that's the introduction. Let's now go step by step and see how to build this app. First, let's talk about the layout. And I'm going to go back to the editor. As I said, and now I'm going to the single page layout. Okay. As I said, the menu is a reusable element and the header is a reusable element. And what's happening here is the different pages. Each of the different pages is set up as a group, and the group names correspond to the selections in the menu. And what you'll see also is that each group has a conditional statement that references a URL parameter that will control whether or not the group is displayed. So now that we have the general layout with the reusable element as the menu and main display groups on the right, we know that the decisions that we make in the menu are going to affect the main display group, and that's going to be controlled through URL parameters. So let's figure out now how to make those URL parameters. Remember that the menu is a reusable element and that the workflow for that is going to be separate from the page. So let's see how to get to that. So right now we're on the main page, and this menu is a reusable element. So on the drop-down menu, there's a whole section for reusable elements. We'll click on the menu, and now we can control the parameters. We can create URL parameters using the menu selections. So each of these choices is a text item in the menu. And if we go to the workflow, we can see that when each of those options is clicked, we have a navigation event. And what happens is the destination page is the same page that we're on. It stays the same. It's the spa dashboard. But what we're adding is more parameters to the page. And what parameters? We get to pick whatever name we want. In this case, I picked parameter view, and I named it. This particular choice is corresponding to the login. So let's see how to do that. So if I go back to the design tab and I add a new text option here, and I'm going to say this is a special page number 1, and I'm going to make it to where we can see it better. So changing the font size. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to add a workflow. So when that text is clicked, navigate to, go to what page? This page. And I'm going to send more parameters to the page. Add another parameter. And so I can create any parameter I want. Let's say URL, UP URL parameter view. And now I can add any text I want to it, and I can say, well, this is special page 1. So the parameter we're adding is an arbitrary text, special 1, and that's going to be keyed to the parameter name UP view. So when I click that, we'll navigate to this page and we'll add a page parameter. And what I want to do then is make that correspond to a different group display on the main page. So if I go over to the group container, I'm going to add a new group here, and I'll make it bigger so we can see it. And I'll change the background just so it's visible. Okay, and I'll put a little text element inside there just so we can distinguish it further. Okay. So now I want to control the display of this group to correspond to clicking of that text. And how do I do that? So I add a conditional statement that says when the URL parameter is such. So how do you get to that? So if you type get, G-E-T, then you get these short menu of options. And what you want is get data from page URL. And it already is suggesting a parameter, which is what we want. And now we have to remember the parameter name. And I said UP view. And so it's saying get UP view from page URL. And we want to know that URL text, the name of that parameter is exactly what we typed before. And here's where you get the value of using option sets, because I don't remember exactly what I typed. So I had to go back to the reusable element and figure it out. What was that arbitrary text? It was special, all caps, _1. Okay. So now we'll go back. We're looking at this group. The conditional statement is arbitrary text, special, all caps, _1. Okay. Then what happens? This element is visible. So we got to make sure that when this page is loaded, that it's not visible, and I'm clicking that, and that it's collapsed when it's hidden. Okay, so now we've set up the URL parameter for this group. Let's see how it looks in context with all the other groups. So each of these groups is contained within a single group, and they're all going to be displayed when the various parameters change. So the top three are going to be changed on a parameter called parameter view, and group C is the up view parameter. So when we test it, let's look at the URLs and see how things change, both in the URL and then how it corresponds in this display section area. Okay, so preview, when I click login, this is the page. This is the parameter name. This is the parameter value. And spaces are filled with %20. So everything looks great. Uh-oh, where's special one? It's down here at the bottom. Okay, what's going on? So we can see that the parameter is correct. That's the parameter that should be added when we click this link, and it has the correct value. So why is the welcome page still showing? Let's go back and look at the editor. So on the sign in welcome page, let's hide the other ones. In the conditional statement for this particular window, when we get the parameter view, that's the name of the first parameter, and its value is logins display, which I'll show you in a second, or if the value of that parameter is empty, then this group will display. So that's what's happening. When I click special page, it sends the parameter for the up view, but the param view parameter is empty. And so we're getting both of these groups displayed. So how can we change that? So what I want to do is to show you the use of option sets. So let's now incorporate group C into the option set scheme that I've already made. So let's go back to the outline, and we're going to redo this using option sets. So the same option set will be used in the menu choices, the URL parameters, and the display groups. So how do you create an option set? So first, go to the data tab over here on the left, and one of the choices at the top is option sets. And the option set that I've already made is called option view. And I'm going to create a new option, special one. And by default, it is given an attribute that's called display, and the type of data that is the text. And what text is it? That's the name of the option that you gave it. So that's why you want to be careful about how you name each of your options. Of course, you can change it, but just know that whatever you name it, that is going to be referenced as the display in a data type text. And what is this button with creating a new attribute? So every option that you have can be given multiple data types and values associated with each of those choices. So for example, if I wanted to add numbers to each of these options, each option has its own list of attributes. So I can say that my team corresponds with number 1, and I can say that my settings corresponds to number 2, and so on. And so you can see where if you have a user needs to make a choice during, in the workflow, that different data types and values can be associated with each of those choices through option sets. So now let's see how to use this new option choice in the workflow that we've already looked at. So if I go back to the design tab, and actually I'm going to have to go back to the design tab of the menu, which is a reusable element, and if I click on the special page, and actually I want to go to the workflow. All right, and remember the navigation event is where the parameters are set up. Actually, I'm going to trash this old parameter, and I'm going to add another parameter, which is the one that I've already created, and I called that param view. And this uses option sets. This time I'm going to add the new option that we just created. The only option set that I've created so far is option view, so that's the only choice there. And here are all the different choices that we made, and the new one that I just added is called special 1. So now it's turned red. Why did it turn red? Well, remember, special 1 has different parameters, and I could choose its display or the number that I created. In this case, I want the display. So it's saying that the new parameter called parameter view will add the display, which is the text attribute of that option. When we click this, we're going to have a navigation event to the same page, and we're going to send this URL parameter along with that navigation event. Okay, so now I need to go back to the SPA dashboard and change the group display, right? The conditional statement, so that it corresponds to the new parameter. So I'm going to delete that statement, and I'm going to say get data from the page URL. Parameter name is, now it's the param view parameter, and it is the type text because I'm using the display of the option set. Get the parameter view, and I want to say when that URL parameter is, get an option. We've only got one option set. Which option? The one we just created, special 1. And again, it would be red until I pick which attribute. In this case, it's the display, which is a text. Okay, so now we've got the conditional statement made, and now we need to tell it what to do. We need to make this element visible, and remember that it should be collapsed when hidden and not visible on page load. So now each group should display by itself according to the selections made in the menu. Let's test it. Login, settings, my team, special page. There it is. So you'll notice when we load the page, let's rerun it again, what's happening. When we load the page, the login group is showing, but the title is changed. What's going on there? And when I click login, it's the same page, but the title has changed. How am I doing that? So on this group, I actually have all of the groups using a reusable element that's the title. And the title is changing according to the URL parameters in the same way that the rest of the groups are changing. So if I navigate to the reusable element that is the title, and I look at the conditional statements, this explains everything. So I'm using the same URL parameters, param view, and I'm making it change the text to match the choices. And when it's empty, so my settings is going to show the URL display, which is my settings in that case, and my team when it's my team, etc. But when it's empty, I'm having it display a different text, which is welcome. So one last thing I promised to do, which is to show you how to convert each of the display groups to reusable elements. So if I navigate back to the dashboard page, and let's say I want to convert this group, group C, into a reusable element. How would I do that? And make it respond to the URL parameters in the same way. So I am going to right click here on group C and convert that to a reusable element. I get to name it, or I'm going to call it the same thing so I know what it is. And now it's created, and I've jumped to the dashboard for that particular reusable element, and it has created it with the same conditional statements already. So when the parameter view from the page URL is special ones display. So you'll notice when it's created with the same conditional statement. However, you do not have the option of displaying this reusable element according to the URL parameter. So what do we do? So I'm going to delete that, and what we need to know is that we can still control it. And how do we do that? So if we navigate back up to the SPA dashboard, and what we want to do is drag a copy of that reusable element. And this is the one with the capital C up to here, and we can add that conditional statement here. So we will add the URL parameter. So when we get the data from the page URL, parameter, param view, and when that is, get an option, special one. Remember, it's the display. Now we can select this element is visible. So this copy of this reusable element will be visible according to the page parameters that we just said. And we need to make sure that it's not displayed when the page loads and it's collapsed when hidden. Okay. And then I am going to, let's go back over there and make sure that we can distinguish this from the regular group. So let's make it have the same visible appearance, flat color, and we can make it green. So we'll know that this is the reusable element. We can also change the text. And that will look different from the group. Navigate back to the dashboard page. All the different groups are there. And actually I'm going to delete group C and display the reusable element. So it should behave exactly the same. The parameters are loading in the same way when the options are clicked in the menu, and the displays will change accordingly. So let's test it. Login, settings, team, special page, and it's the reusable element version. So that's it. It's working as designed. We've gone through how a simple layout for a single page app, and talked about how to make URL parameters, how to use option sets, and how to convert a group into a reusable element and apply the same URL parameters with option sets to that new reusable element. So I know that was a lot. Go back and look at each part if you need to get clarity. Thanks.
And just like that, you now know how to build your own single page app using Bubble. Look, as we've mentioned throughout this tutorial, they're an extremely powerful alternative to creating a fast, responsive application. If you found this video useful and you wanted to stay up to date with any additional Bubble resources we share, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button on my channel. It'll just make sure you're the first to know whenever we drop a new tutorial. For now though, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to watch this specific video, and I wish you all of the best on your own no-code journey.